the names of all three men who survived, but said he didn't know how to contact them. The Centac detectives needed to find out if there had been a legitimate raid at the marina. They contacted every law enforcement agency in South Florida that handled drug cases.
None of them had any operations close to the boatyard where this incident happened. So at that time, when I canceled out that this was a legitimate raid, my next focus was, well, these people must have been phony cops, people impersonating police officers, because there was a trend at that time for people to dress up as police officers and raid drug dealers' homes and steal their cash and steal their drugs.
To check the victim's son's story, investigators went to the marina where the raid took place. They interviewed the security guard who had been on duty that night.
How are you?
He said that 7 or 8 men in police uniforms rushed the marina and headed for one of the boats.
They went right past the security guard. Security guard said, being South Florida, there's nothing unusual, you know, go at it.
He hadn't gotten a good look at any of them. Investigators later searched that boat but found no clues. So they turned their attention to looking for the 3 men who had survived the raid. 2 of the 3 survivors had minor police records but could not be located at their last known address. The next day, Centac 26 detectives played a hunch. They figured that the survivors would likely be going to the wake for one of the deceased victims.
So we showed up at the funeral home with the names and identities of the people who we were looking for.
The detectives were right. They recognized the survivors from arrest photos and approached the men as they entered. The men confirmed the boat was overrun by a group of raiders dressed like cops.
They're wearing blue uniforms.
But the men denied the boat was involved in drug running. They claimed they were simply having a party.
They had been drinking beer with the 3 victims and 2 additional friends. And while they were there drinking beer and having a good time, people in blue uniforms stormed past the front gate of the marina and started yelling, "Police, police."
The gunmen began assaulting them.
They said several friends were thrown in the water by these individuals dressed in blue uniforms.
Within minutes, all 6 men were overboard in the Miami River. But only 3 swam to safety. The investigation had now become a triple homicide. With the case stalled, the FBI offered their assistance. Special Agent Robert Martin.
At about the same time that the homicide investigation began regarding the 3 bodies found in the Miami River, an FBI cooperating witness provided some information to us regarding a group of police officers who were involved in some rip-offs. And he identified who those guys were, at least several of them, knew who some of them were, and had conversations with them.
Detective Alvarez got an unexpected call from an agent in counterintelligence.
He says he needs to meet with us, that he has motive and possible information about our case. So he put 2 and 2 together, so maybe this is related to this information that I'm getting through my informant, Armando Un. Now we can narrow down.
Armando Un, the FBI agent said, was a well-connected nightclub worker that knew about a group of crooked cops who were ripping off drug dealers along the Miami River. Centac 26 detectives went to see Armando Un. But he did not want to see them. Detectives from Miami-Dade's Drug Task Force, Centac 26, were investigating the deaths of 3 men found floating in the Miami River. They hoped an informant named Armando Un could help them. His friend and employer had been found murdered in the Florida Everglades. His name was Luis Rodriguez, the owner of a nightclub in Miami's Little Havana district. He'd been shot several times in the head and then stuffed in a box rigged to spring open. A gruesome display. Investigating for Syntac 26 was Detective Alex Alvarez and Sergeant George Plasencia. They needed to get Armando Un to talk.
We never mentioned anything about 3 bodies. Our ploy in speaking to him was that we were investigating the death of his best friend, the murder of his best friend.
According to Detective Plasencia, Armando Un was very candid.
We sat down and chatted with him for a while about Luis Rodriguez, and he said, yeah, Luis Rodriguez was involved in drug trafficking.
Would you recognize him? Do you know what?
He admitted that Rodriguez was dealing drugs out of his nightclub and said he believed the men Rodriguez was involved with killed him.
It is true that he was trafficking drugs.
He was furious that his friend had been murdered and said he wanted to help.
He was making money for everybody.
But if he knew about police officers, real or fake, robbing drug dealers, he said nothing.
He never mentioned that the police officers were involved. He did say that Luis Rodriguez was friendly with some officers.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Armando Un seemed wary and selected his words carefully. When the interview ended, the detectives still had no suspects in the Miami River murders. All they really knew was that Luis Rodriguez was dead and may be the 4th drug murder victim in as many days. Then a City of Miami detective contacted Plasencia and Alvarez with a surprising lead. He said that Luis Rodriguez had also worked for him as a police informant.
He told us that Luis Rodriguez was giving him information about people who were dressed as police imposters and were ripping off drug dealers and committing murders in Dade County.
The detective explained that he had met Luis Rodriguez through a Miami patrol officer named Marco Rivera.
I said, we need your help now. I need you to set up a meeting between the street cop and George and I, and let's tell him that we're investigating Luis Rodriguez's murder. That'll be the cover story.
The meeting was set for that night at the Miami Police Department. Officer Rivera worked the late shift in 60 Sector, police code for Little Havana. He verified that he knew Luis Rodriguez and that Rodriguez had, on occasion, been his informant. But then, without prompting, he brought up the Miami River drownings.
He volunteered some information about the 3 bodies that were floating up in the Miami River. He said that these guys stole the drugs themselves, and when the owner of the drugs found out about it, had them murdered, or they were thrown in the water and drowned themselves, that there was no cops involved at all.
His denial that officers were involved, which no one had mentioned, seemed too forceful.
Can you tell us one more time what happened?
The Syntac 26 detectives tested him.
We asked this patrolman to repeat his story at the conclusion of our meeting, and we detected that the story didn't fit the first story that he had told us. There was something wrong there.
Rivera claimed a street source told him about the raid, so the detectives asked to speak directly with the source.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, just give me a call tomorrow. I'll try to contact him, and if I can't get in contact with him for any reason, I'll let you guys know.
For the Syntac investigators, the case had taken a dramatic turn. This officer, sworn to uphold the law, seemed to be hiding something. The following day, Officer Marco Rivera introduced the detectives to the source who allegedly had information about the Miami River murders.
I don't know if I should even be talking to these guys. I don't even know, bro.
Rivera claimed his source could verify that drug trafficking Colombians had carried out the raid, not Miami cops.
Hey, what's going on, man? Hey, listen, we understand that.
But as the source spoke, he had a hard time remembering details of his story.